Now, yeah, what I want to look at, obviously, it's a sphere. It's just a circle being bathed in light from the top right, which gives it this beautiful spherical appearance. And we're going to try and achieve that. But look at the colours in there. Look at the really nice colours. It's not just a grey disc. It's got blues and browns and all sorts of different hues. We're going a bit green in there as well. But look at the texture on the surface as well. Look at these craters, and I really want to try and pick those out. And you can only really see the craters along this little kind of interface between light and dark. See where the light's hitting it full on there, you can't see any of the craters because they're in full light. But as the moon rolls round into darkness and the light hits these craters on the side, you can suddenly see them, because inside the crater there's a shadow, and then outside the crater on the darker side there's also a shadow, and that gives you there along that edge, along that light dark interface, you can start to see the texture of the surface of the moon. So we're going to try and do that. The rest of it, just follow along. It's going to be really nice. This is, fingers crossed. Okay, now you will need something to draw around. I've got a lid. If you haven't, you'll just have a funny egg-shaped moon, but that's okay. So a lid, if you've got a small piece of paper, a 2p piece or a jam jar bottom, or if you're sophisticated, a pair of compasses. But just whiz off and grab yourself something round, or even the bottom of your mug, if you've got enough room on your paper. I'm just going to place him in the middle there and just draw around. Just draw around him like this. There we are. Okay. I'll go slowly just in case you've had to shoot off and find yourself something circular to draw around. And what I want to do is just along this bit down here, I'm just going to put some of these craters in. And what I'm doing, I'm drawing the shadowy side on the inside of the crater and the shadowy side of the outside of the crater. Oops. And of course, there's lots and lots of spits and spots. But what I'm doing is I'm just drawing these two C shapes like that to give you the impression of this cratered surface. And I'm only doing it along this band across the middle like that. Let's just spend a little time putting a few of those in, all different sizes, and a few dots and the odd circle, because we want to make this surface look interesting. But what's happening as well, the shadow on the inside is always a little bit smaller than the shadow on the outside, and that tells us that there's a rim, there's a ridge going around there. The light's coming down here, and there is a ridge of the crater. So I'm just putting a few of those in.
Could you just show us up close once more, please, Martin?
Yeah, I will. It's not very complicated, but it's just those two C shapes facing each other, with the one on the left slightly larger. That's the shadow outside the crater. And the ones on the right are the shadows inside the crater. And a few dots, a few loose boulders lying here and there. And then you can make some of them a little bit bigger if you like. And the ones that are a little bit bigger can cast a bit more of a shadow on the inside like that. See, that looks quite, it's quite a convincing overhead view of a crater, isn't it? And just pepper the surface, just along that band down the center like that, with a few little marks. Few dots, few stray stranded boulders. Few circles. The more visual entertainment, the more it's got to be relevant, but the more relevant visual entertainment you can give the viewer, the better. So they can feast their eyes on your creation. A bit of a mountain ridge down here. See that there? But, you know, don't worry about that too much. Don't think anybody's going to be relying on these paintings as an accurate geographical reference. So there, you see, I've got quite a nice selection of different marks just down that little band going diagonally across where the light meets the dark. And that's probably enough to be getting on with. The light and the dark, we're going to create that with paint. Okay. Right, let's do some painting. First job, on paintbrush. The first thing I want to do, because all these colors merge into each other, there are no real hard edges on here. It's all just these lovely blooms of different shades of browns and blues. I'm going to pre-wet this with clean water. I'm going to stay inside the edge. I'm going to stay inside the circle that I've drawn, but I'm just going to paint it now with clean water. We're doing a bit of wet in wet. So as careful as you can, just paint inside the circle with clear water, right up to the edge and all over. You kind of look at it from an angle, you can see where you've been and where you need to go by the way that the light catches the paper. So you want it to be shiny all over. And then like that. Like that. You don't want puddles sitting on your paper, but you don't want dry bits either, because if you've got any dry bits, the paint's going to leave a hard edge. So once it's on there, just go over it once or twice, because when you start dropping paint into this, you want it to be dropped onto a wet surface. You don't want it to be dropped into water. You just want it to be dropped onto wet paper, really. So that's mine all nicely wet up. If I catch, I was going to say, look, can you see it's shiny there? Look, that's how wet mine is. No puddles or anything, just nice, shiny, got a nice shiny circle. Right up, just touching that pencil line around the side. Okay. Now, when we put colour onto this, it's going to start to, it's going to bleed out. I'm going to use some of this blue, which is my ultramarine blue. I've got a nice, starting off quite watery, because it's very pale on this side. So if I start off on this side, if I start to put down my little spots of colour, look, and I'm just plopping that in, I'm just touching it. I'm touching the paper with my brush. And look what's happening to that paint. It's just flooding out and making a really nice soft-edged bloom. So I'm going to do that. And just create some of these blue crater spots. You might find that the paper's getting a bit dry around the edges. It'll dry from the outside and go in. So in order to keep your paint edges soft, you might just have to check around the edges and make sure you've got no dry bits. And add a little bit of clean water if you have to. Right, now I'm going to add a little bit of brown now. There's brown and yellows in here. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing with brown. Now brown and blue mixed together make a really rather nice grey, which is the overall impression of colour that you get from the moon, isn't it? You look at the moon, you think, okay, it's grey. So when these browns and blues mix and mingle together, they will make a grey. There, see that's going grey there. You can maybe try a different colour as well. The more, the more colours you get, the more interesting it is actually. So I've just put, I've got a bit of this lovely gold yellow in here, just a little crater field there with a different colour. I could try a different blue. There's my little swatch card. I could come in with that. That's a very nice kind of neutrally grey blue, a cool blue. I could certainly put a bit of that in there. And while ever this paper's wet, whenever you drop the paint on, it'll just ooze out and create lovely soft edges. Now, what you might find is if you put so much water on, it's starting to make a puddle down there. We don't really want puddles of water sitting on your paper. So if you do get that, wash your brush, dry it out on a piece of kitchen roll like that, and just touch it in here. And that brush will suck up that excess water, dry it out and suck it up like that. I think I'm being a bit meek with my colour here, so I'm going to go back and crank it up a bit. Although I want to keep it quite pale on this side, I could probably get a bit more colour going on in here. What you can do, if you have gone in there with plenty of colour, you can just pop in clean water as well if you like, and that does wild and wonderful things too. Clean water just goes on and pushes the paint aside. decided my colour's not strong enough. I've been a little bit meek and a little bit scared of colour here, so I'm going to crank it up and put some stronger colour in. So look at that, lovely blue. And of course, because this is wet, you can go straight into your paint and put some nice, rich, strong colour in as well. Look at that. That's more like it. Let's make this moon psychedelic. Let's put some really nice, strong colour in. That's much, much better. I was being a little bit too nervous before, but now that's more like it. I was painting with coloured water before now. Now this is painting with paint, and it's much more successful. Just going to pop a bit of colour in there, clean water. All right, I've got one or two rivers on here, which actually look quite nice, but I don't want that much water, so I'm drying off my brush and just hoovering up. Okay, right, now that is enough for the time being. I'm going to leave that like that. Now what I want to do, I want to paint space around here, but I don't want to touch this wet moon with the paint that I'm painting the space with. Otherwise, it's going to do what it's doing in here. It's going to run into there. So ideally, this needs to be dry. Now, you can wait 10 minutes and let it dry off, or you can give it a waft with a hairdryer. I've got a cheeky little blowtorch, which I use just to dry off my paintings when they're like this. So if I'm in a hurry and I just want to dry off an edge or dry off a little bit of a portion of wet paint, I give it a blast with my, I think it's like a Cook's blowtorch. You probably can't see the flame, but it is there, I guarantee it. And that'll just take off the excess moisture. So what I want to do is I'm just going to dry off this edge, because I'm going to paint in the space now around it. Okay. If you haven't got anything to dry your painter off, you might like to wait for a bit, or you could just be very, very careful and leave a little hairline gap between the moon and the space so that the two bits don't meet. But anyway, what we need to do is create a really nice deep dark color to put in this space on the outside. And what I want to do is I'm going to, with clean water again, or as clean as you can possibly get, I'm going to paint a band of water around here. And I'm not going to go straight up to the edge. I'm going to paint a band of water around the moon so that when I paint in a black outline just outside the moon, the paint's going to hit this band of water and just go out and diffuse into a soft edge. And hopefully that's going to give the illusion that this moon is peeping through a hole in the clouds. So look at that. I'm painting a circle of clean water all the way around like this. But I'm leaving about, what, a centimetre between the moon and this water, this circle of water around the outside. Hope this will work. And again, with the sky, is it sky? The space, I'm not just going to fill it in with a solid black. I'm going to make a really dark colour out of different bits of paint so that when it separates, it too is going to have a very complex colour structure. Let me show you what I mean. So if you're making a black, you want to grab your darkest colours. I've got a very dark green here, for example. So I'm going in here and getting a brush full of dark green. And look, that's so dark, it's almost black already. But it's no good trying to make a black out of these colors. These are too light. You want to make a black out of these guys down here, and maybe even some purple. So I've got green in there. I want to put the complementary color to green in to neutralize it. I don't want green space. I want a neutral space. So I've got a dark red. So I can put a dark red in there as well. Not mixing it up too much, and I'm not making it too runny either, because this is, I want to try and make a black here. So I want to make this as dark as I possibly can. So I don't want to make it too runny. I don't want too much water in there. And I've got this very dark, I don't know what it is. It's like a really dark Prussian blue, which is a very nice space color. So I'm going to go in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint up to the edge of my moon like this. But then look what's happening where it hits the wet paper. It's kind of running out. Look at this. It's off. It's doing its thing. So where I'm painting on the white, on the dry paper, my edges are very sharp. But where it's hitting the water, look, it's making this lovely fanned out, fractally kind of wonderful thing. And again, like I said, I don't want just ordinary color in there. So I can come in there with a bit of green. I can come in there with a bit of, what else can we put in there? You can try a little bit of that red there, look, because that'll work its way out into this soft edge, and it'll give us a really interesting color. So nice strong color. My paper's starting to dry out a bit around the outside. I'm just going to wet it again, because I think when it runs out like this, it looks really effective. So I want to give it plenty of moisture to run into. The paint will always find its way into a wet area. Okay, so that's nice and wet around here. I can carry on painting up to my moon. Nice if you get a good crisp edge. Running out of paint a bit, so make a bit more quickly. Let's try some of this lovely inky grey. Look at that. It's off, shooting off into the liquid. I want to go all the way around. Look at that. Doesn't that look nice? And doesn't it look like a little gap in the clouds? Peeping through a gap in the clouds to see the moon. Okay. Now, what we're looking at is, we're kind of looking at a full moon, aren't we? And we've got a half moon here. It's quite unusual that you can see detail in the shaded area of the dark side of the moon here. You can see it in there. Now, I'd like to create that. But again, I need to dry off this wet piece here. I'd like very much to make half of my moon dark, but I also know that if I put color and tone inside here and it hits this wet outside, if it's the wet space, it's going to create all kinds of stuff. It's going to go very strange. It's going to run, it's going to mingle. So I'm going to use my blowtorch again just to try and dry off just the edge around the outside. You just let it dry. Maybe you don't, if you want to try this later, just let it dry off a little bit, because I'm now going to try and paint the dark side of the moon. So I'm drying off with my little Cook's blowtorch just around here. And now I'm going to make this half darker. And I'm going to do that by glazing over the top. And when I say glazing, what I mean is I'm painting over a dry surface with another layer of paint, which is going to, well, I'm painting on the shadow, basically. I'm painting on the shadow of the moon. So what color would that be? It's a neutral color. I could probably do it with this paint that I've got here. So I'm putting a glaze of gray over the dark side of the moon, and I'm coming halfway, and then I want a very soft edge. I want that. I don't want to finish with a sharp line. I want it to disappear into the whiteness like that. Okay, so this is a bit ambitious, but let's have a go. I should really let this dry right off, and I probably haven't let it dry enough, but I'm going to have a crack anyway. I'm going to try and paint the shadow of the moon. So I'm going to be quick. If I leave this on here too long, it's going to dry off and it's going to leave a mark. So there we go. That's down there. That's down that line. I'm quickly washing my brush, and with clean water, I'm coming down this edge here like that, just to make that hard edge disappear. Little spot in there, so I'm sucking that up with my thirsty brush. It's a bit messy around there. It's quite nice. I've got a bit of a glow underneath here. That looks nice. I could probably go a little bit darker in here. But now this is wet again. I can kind of paint in color and not worry too much about getting my hard edges, because, you know, we're wet in wet again. It's a bit scrappy here and there, but now it's wet again. I can go into what we were doing right at the beginning, and I can start to lob in little bits of color again, like we did right at the beginning, remember? And I can start to create those craters again. Just because now the surface is wet, I can do all that blobbing. It's nice when I put little blobs in there, that suggests those cratery things again. Got rivers and puddles on here that I'm just sucking up again with my thirsty brush. It's a bit pale over here, just looking over here. It's got a bit. Let's see if we can just drop in a little bit of colour in here. So you've got nice blooms and back runs going on down here, which makes it all look very interesting. big old lakes of water down here that I don't really want, so I'm just going to suck these up. Because as a final touch, it'll be nice to just spatter in a few stars. All kinds of fabulous galaxies happening out here. This, of course, would work better on really good quality watercolor paper. This is just sketchbook cartridge paper. If you work with a really nice watercolor paper, you know, made of rag or cotton or cellulose, then it gives you much more time to just play around with the colors. Stays much wetter, much longer. And you'll find that you have you have the opportunity to do some really nice effects. Just buys you a bit more time. Right, I'm just popping in a bit more visual entertainment here, putting in a few. Oh, it's quite nice just drawing in a few of the craters, you know, the ones we did earlier with pencil. It's quite nice to do it with paint, sorry. Okay. A glimpse of the moon through clouds. Now, just quickly going to dry him off because I'm going to grab my ink. Got some white ink somewhere. Here it is. It's got some white ink. You can use white gouache. You can use a bit of watered down white acrylic, a bit of emulsion, white emulsion. Try anything, a bit of toothpaste. And I've just got an old brush. I'm just going to put a few stars in our sky. Okay. I like to protect my moon when I do this, so I'm just going to put a bit of tissue down there, and let's just put a few little stars here and there. That should do it. Oops. Right, and then just got my old, what do they call these? Posca pens. It's just a pen with a bit of white ink. You could do this with a brush if you want. Don't know if it needs it actually. Just picking out a few of the highlights on there. Probably didn't need that, but anyway. And do you know what? I reckon that's about done. Let me just move that before that goes everywhere. So there we are. It's a bit of an adventure, a bit of adventure in space. You see here, a few little spots. That's where it's splattered onto paper that's still wet. So that's dispersed a bit. But everywhere else, we've got a glimpse of the moon through a cloudy sky, a gap in the clouds. It's quite effective, isn't it? All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to call that a day. Look at that. It's quite good, isn't it? Right.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. There. All right, everybody. Well, if you didn't manage to, what you do need to do is you do need to let it dry before you do the dark side of the moon. That there, you do need to obviously let it dry so that you can get a nice edge down the middle, and you do need to let it dry before you spot your stars on. But have another go. It's a nice way to spend half an hour.
Martin, where did you get your dryer from?
Oh, Amazon, of course.
I can't find anything on it. I was looking because I left my painting to dry. What's it called?
I think it's just called a mini blowtorch. Oh, look at that. It's good, isn't it?
No.
I think you can get them from a cook shop, Martin.
Yes, I'm sure you probably can. It's for
Well, that's
glazing.
what I got.
It's for crisping up your creme brulees and that kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah. It's just very handy. It's really nice to have it in your pencil case. This goes with me on location, and you know, like you say, if you've been doing a bit of wetting wet and you've got your atmospheric moody washes down, but you want to crack on and get the finer detail done with the dry brush, yeah, then this is a great little tool just to dry it off, and you can keep going. Otherwise, you're waiting for half an hour, aren't you, while it dries? So yeah, really nice little tool.
And
if you're at home, a hairdryer is just as good and probably less dangerous. I have set my paper on fire before now, so you've got to be careful with these things.
What about a heat gun? Would that be too hot?
Brilliant. No, I used to use one of those as well, like a paint stripper gun. Perfect.
Oh, well, I've got one of those. Good.
You be careful, Gwen. I'm not responsible for anything. I don't want to be responsible for burning your house down.
Bye.
All right, everybody. I'll see you all next week. Have a great one.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your gong session.
I will. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you all about it next week. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.